Today, we finally tackled a little bit of breaking news we got about Kevin Stefanski. We go over his introductory press conference and who's on his staff. It's time to get Falcon set.
This ain't no time to be afraid no more. It's time for bravery. No matter if my homies think I'm crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 4 of the Get Falcon Set podcast. Happy Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about this episode. So let's just go right into it, man. I'm gonna go more in depth into Kevin Stefanski hire. We're gonna go over the GM search, who's on his staff, and more important, I think the most important thing from this is who's calling plays. I think that's one of the things that caught a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans off guard. So yeah, let's start us off. The Atlanta Falcons, a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago, hired Kevin Stefanski as the franchise's 20th head coach. I actually don't hate the hire. I'm not gonna lie. This is a guy who, like, in his entire coaching history, he was coached with the Vikings for a while. Assistant head coach, assistant QB's coach, tight end coach, running backs coach, and then eventually worked his way up to the offensive coordinator before getting the job in Cleveland. But this is a guy who he did not. I wouldn't quite say a history of winning. He's definitely won a little bit, but not like a history of winning. All of his stops as a head coach, he is 162, 160, and 2, including 4 and 8 in playoff games. One of those games, of course, is the infamous Minnesota Miracle game against New Orleans in the 2017 playoffs. And then, of course, he beat Pittsburgh with the Browns in 2020. But yeah, that's where he last was Cleveland in the from 2020 to 2025. He got fired this past year. Now, okay. Let me bring something up here, right? Because I think this is one of the things that gets a lot of Falcons fans like up in arms about right now, and it's the fact that you're saying that Kevin Stefanski doesn't fit the culture here, right? You're saying that Atlanta's a diverse city, and you go get a guy who like really fumbled the Shedeur Sanders situation, and to that, I sit with a lot of Falcons fans I know right now saying that we don't have a culture right now. We don't have a GM. We don't have a head coach. We don't win. We don't win enough to start talking about, oh, this guy doesn't fit our culture. We don't have a culture yet. We need to go get a culture before we can sit down and say, hey, this guy fits our culture. This guy wants our head coach. We need to get that. We don't have it. We've never had it. So for Falcons fans to come out and say, oh, a black city, you get the guy who fumbled Stefanski, especially fumbled Shedeur, especially because he's Deion's son. Why would you go do that? I don't care. This is a great hire by the Falcons team. You get someone who can really open up the game on the offensive side of the ball. You get someone who's a 2-time coach of the year. You get someone who turned Joe Flacco and Baker Mayfield into comeback player of the year. You got a playoff win. You have 2 playoff bursts. You have someone who took a Cleveland Browns franchise that was really down in the dumps for the longest time. Think about it. For the longest time, the Browns were a laughingstock in the NFL, and Kevin Stefanski took that and propelled them to the playoffs, right? Propelled them to a better culture than they've had. The only thing right now that has me a bit worried is the fact that while he was in Cleveland, he didn't put together a consistent winner, right? I'm looking at his history right now. He had a 45-56 record as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. 11-5 in year 1, and then 8-9, 7-10, and then he went 8-6, and then 3-14, 5-12, right? I don't 100% believe that's his fault. I think the Browns are just a flawed organization, but that's one of the things that kind of worries me. Is Stefanski going to be able to put together a consistent winner here in Atlanta, right? Is he going to be able to get the most out of Drake London or Bijan Robinson or Michael Penix enough to have us put together consistent back-to-back winning seasons, right? Is this going to be our coach that we're like maybe 10 years down the road and we're like, okay, we've won with him. Maybe we have Super Bowl, maybe we don't, but like we feel like we're a lot closer with him than we would be if we were to let him go, right? I think with the last couple of head coaches, right, with Dan Quinn, with Arthur Smith, with Raheem Morris, we didn't feel that way when we kind of let him go, right? We kind of was like, hey, it's time for a change, right? Instead of like, we're better off keeping this guy than we are to let him walk and test the market, because we don't. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah. But I do think that the Falcons have a lot more weapons for Stefanski to use. I'm thinking back to the Browns team last year. You want Kitshawn Junkins, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Shadur, Dylan Gabriel. You have a revolving door quarterback with a 40-year-old Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadur Sanders, and you're telling me that you wanted him to do something with that? I think that he would have a lot easier time doing something, having a good time with a Drake London or a Bijan Robinson or Darnell Mooney or Kyle Pitts if we decide to keep him, or Michael Penix, right? I think when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, there's a lot of weapons, a lot of fun to be had, especially with the offensive-minded head coach like Stefanski. He can do a lot with that. The fun part was sitting down yesterday, going through his introductory press conference. There was a lot he had talked about. He did end up saying that Atlanta's where he wanted to be. And I think that is important, right? This is a job that is polarizing to a lot of teams, right? Sure, we don't have a first-round pick this year, right? But we have probably the most explosive player in the NFL right now in Bijan Robinson. We have a wide receiver that can catch anything in Drake London, right? We have a young quarterback who is still hungry and wanting to develop, right? We have a defense that is just humming right now, right? With JPJ, Jalen Walker, Jesse Bates, AJ, Xavier Watts, all those guys, right? This was one of the most polarizing head coaching jobs on the market. And to know that pretty much as soon as Stefanski was fired from Cleveland, like, hey, if this job opens, this is where I want to go. That gives me hope that he has a bright vision, right? And I think that's one of the things that him and Matt Ryan talked about was the fact that they have a shared vision, right? They have the same vision for this franchise. He was in that with the GM, with the new GM search we're going on. We'll talk about that later on in the show. He's sitting in the interviews because he has a shared vision with them too. So to know that your president of football and your head coach and your GM, they're going to have that same vision, that same idea of how they want this team to look. That's definitely something that's very promising to me. We'll talk more about it later on in the show. But yeah, Tommy Rees, the new offensive coordinator we just hired, he's going to be the one calling plays. We'll dive a whole lot more into that in maybe the next 10, 15 minutes or so. He loves Bijan. I mean, I thought that was like pretty quick. Like I remember, I forget who asked it, but he asked like, "What are your thoughts on Bijan Robinson, like in general?" And all Stefanski said was, "He's good." And the next question. That's all we needed. Because I mean, what else can you say about Bijan, right? He's 2,000 yards from scrimmage, almost set. He was like 200 yards away from setting the single season scrimmage yards record. So yeah, we know how good he is. And I think another thing that I'm really interested to see how he does it, right? He's going to keep his head down. He believes in the roster we have right now, but he's also not concerned about the past of this team, right? So like, it's not like he's going back through the last couple of years and saying, okay, this is what we have. This is what we've done. Let me switch up a little bit, right? This gives me a couple things, right? This gives me an idea that maybe you see Kyle Pitts back here next year, right? Maybe you go out and try and sign him on a cheap deal, right? Maybe Stefanski and Tommy Rees think they can get something out of him that we haven't seen since his rookie year. That also gives me an idea that we're going to see the offense in a different way than we've ever. We're going to see this offense in a different way than we saw it last year and the last 2 years under Zach Robinson and Raheem Morris. It's going to be really fun to watch because that's a big question mark for me. What do you mean? Like, how are we going to change the offense? There's a lot of things we can do when it comes to this offense. Like, we have so many pieces that can go anywhere. I mean, they talked about in the first conference, Kyle Pitts being able to line up as a traditional tight end, being able to line up out wide in the backfield. We know Bijan can go anywhere. He has the blocking ability to be a pass blocker out the backfield, or you can go line him out for like a slant route or a go route, something on the outside. Drake London, he can run any route in his route tree. He has everything in his arsenal to run. that's going to be something really interesting to watch next year, is how we decide to run the offense. Because I think the defense has the strength to get us to the playoffs, but eventually the offense is going to have to carry a lot of that load. So it's going to be very interesting to see there. What else do I have here? Matt Ryan was also a draw for Stefanski to come here, to be able to learn how the city operates, be able to know, like, be able to learn, like, I guess help. I don't know how to say it. It's like, in a way, to have a vision for this team with Matt Ryan, and to know that you have someone in your corner who believes in the city, believes in you, who's going to roll with you. I am really, I got excited watching the press conference today, because I do think this team has the ability to make the playoffs next year. It's just a matter of coaching, and I think we have the right guy to do it. But now let's go ahead and talk about our staff right now. So we all know we ended up retaining Jeff Ulbrich. I think that's a huge piece. We ended up retaining him, Justin Hood, our secondary coach, Nate Ollie, our defensive line coach, and then Dave Huxtable, our senior defensive assistant. Now, I said a couple of those names. Y'all are like, who the hell are you talking about? Let me go a little bit more in depth, right? So we know Jeff Ulbrich, right? Defensive coordinator, came in last year, led us to the most sacks in franchise history, right? Had the defense humming for most of the year, right? We don't need an introduction on him, right? Nate Ollie is our defensive line coach. We hired him last year. He's one of the big reasons why JPJ, Jalen Walker, Brandon Doris, why all those guys had great seasons, right? He's our defensive line coach, right? That's what he specializes in, that defensive line. Justin Hood, our secondaries coach, he was really key in the development of Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts. We know those two rookies were flying all around the field, especially Billy Bowman before he got hurt, but really Xavier Watts, especially with the two interception game against Los Angeles in week 17. Yeah, I really like that move. He also turned D. Alford into somebody who, now we're sitting here like, are we going to re-sign him? Are we going to drop up? What are we going to do with D. Alford, right? So I really like us retaining Justin Hood. I think that was something that was needed for the continued development of the secondary. And then Dave Huxtable, he's a senior defensive assistant, but he works really closely with like the front seven, and then like in particularly the outside linebackers. So your Leonard Floyd, Arnold Abicades, Jalen Walker, JPJ, Braylon Trice, those guys, those are who we worked with very closely. And you remember Arnold Abicades, all four of those guys, except for Braylon Trice, who I'm pretty sure got hurt again. They were humming when they were on the field, right? It's like we were having a rotating guys. You didn't know if it was going to be Leonard Floyd or Ebikadi or Walker and Ebikadi or JPJ. It's like you could mix and match all of them, and they couldn't stop it, right? There's a reason why this team had the most sacks in the season, and that's because we were able to mix and match those spaces. So by retaining him, you kind of get another outside linebackers coach, someone who can continue the development of Jalen Walker and JPJ, someone who can get more out of Leonard. I think we have another year at Leonard Floyd. Somebody can get another year out of Leonard Floyd. Maybe we go re-sign Honor Ebikadi. It's like when you have magnets on a dry erase board and you're just kind of moving them around. That's how we run our defense right now. And I think that's great, and it's especially great for the development because you're not like burning out guys. And so keeping Dave Huxtable, I think, is a big plus. We also kept Michael Petrie, who was our running backs coach. He coached Bijan and Tyler. Those are two 1,000-yard rushers. Bijan's done it 2 years in a row. Algier did it in his first year in 2022. I think that with Michael Petrie coming back and with the hiring of Bill Callahan, the legendary offensive line coach, we've seen him be an offensive line coach for years and years and years. He was just with the Titans from 24 to 25. He coached with Stefanski in Cleveland from 2020 to 2023. I think if you combined the running game we're going to have with Michael Petrie and the offensive line play from like Matthews and McGarry and Lindstrom and Bergeron and whoever the hell we tried out of safety, and those guys learning under Bill Callahan, I think we have the makings for a top 5 rushing offense, right? And that might not sound like a lot to y'all right now, but like we were 8 last year, but I think that we are a team right now. I think Matt Ryan talked about it in the press conference too. leaning on the run game, especially with the young quarterback, and really especially with the young quarterback coming off an injury, is key. So if we can get that running game going, it's gonna keep rolling because those guys don't stop. But I think the most headlining, surprising, whatever you want to call it, hire from this coaching cycle is Tommy Rees. He was the offensive coordinator for Cleveland last year. Why am I out of order on my sheets? What the heck? There we go. Yeah. So Tommy Rees, he's been coaching since 2017. He was with Notre Dame. Then he went to Bama for a year. Then he went to Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski. And I think it's very interesting, right? This is a guy who really knows the passing game, right? He was a QB's coach for 3 years in Notre Dame. He was the pass game specialist. He was the offensive coordinator for Cleveland last year. But I think it is important to note that, like, he's never had great weapons, right? I mean, unless you want to talk about like the Alabama year, right, where he coached Jalen Milroe and Jason McClellan, those guys, right? Yeah, sure, you can have those guys, but don't forget that's a Bama team that was pretty much on their last leg with Nick Saban, and they lost to Michigan in the Rose Bowl. But like since he got to the pros, his quarterbacks has been Jameis, Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson Robinson, Bailey Zappi, Shadur, Dylan Gabriel, Joe Flacco. I mean, I don't know what you wanted from him, right? I do think that he could very well possibly be a good play caller, and he does have experience calling plays. He took over the play calling for the offense in week 10 of last year. So the teams he went up against, he played in New York against the Jets, at home versus Baltimore, in Vegas against at home against San Francisco, at home against Tennessee, on the road in Chicago, at home versus Buffalo, at home versus Pittsburgh, and then on the road versus Cincinnati. I mean, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at 3 rivalry games. You have a Chicago team that's fighting for the playoffs. You have a Buffalo team that's fighting for the playoffs. You have a San Francisco 49ers team that somehow always has a pretty decent defense, no matter how banged up they are. I mean, that's not easy to do, especially if that's your first time calling plays in an NFL setting. That's not easy to do. And so to know that he had to do that all with a rookie quarterback, I think he ended up switching quarterbacks at that point too. So to know that he did all that, to know that he somewhat righted the ship, in 2 years with so much QB, so many QB issues, not knowing who you're going to be your starter and whatnot. I really like that, right? And I'm not too nervous. I'll say I was nervous at first when I heard that Tommy Rees was going to be taking over play calling for the Atlanta Falcons, but I'm not there anymore because I think he can get the job done, right? And if Stefanski believes in him right now, I'm going to believe in him until he gives me reason not to, right? I think that's a really key thing, right? The way how I've always seen the NFL is you have to believe, especially with the new regime, right? New quarterback, new head coach, new play caller. You have to believe in them until they give you a reason not to, right? And so far, Stefanski, Tommy Rees, they have not given you a reason not to believe in them, right? We know Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, they gave you a lot of reasons to not believe in them, right? Whether it was Raheem Morris's horrible clock management or Zach Robinson's questionable play calling, right? Or Arthur Smith's horrible play calling, horrible personnel decisions. They gave you a reason not to believe in them. And right now, Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees have not done that yet. And I think that's very important. I actually sped through that a lot faster than I thought I was going to. But it's all right. But then the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the GM search. I was for certain that we were going to have our GM by yesterday. I do think we're going to end up getting our GM sometime in the next week. So by the next show we have, we'll definitely be talking about the GM we ended up hiring. But so far we've interviewed about 6 candidates. James LePerfect. I butchered that like hell. He was the Houston assistant general manager. Andy Weidel, he was Pittsburgh's assistant general manager. Ian Cummings, he was Chicago's. Josh Williams, he was the 49ers director of scouting and football. Mike Bradway, he was Kansas City's assistant general manager. And Joe Douglas, he was Philadelphia's senior personnel director, personnel director, and advisor to the GM. Now, I think out of those 6 names, I think there's 3 that I wouldn't be mad at taking, right? I think you can go get Ian Cunningham. He has a lot of experience as a scout, a lot of experience in player personnel. He's pretty much led that rebuild we saw in Chicago with Caleb Williams and all that, right? He made the playoffs, won Chicago's first playoff games in like 2009, I'm pretty sure. So that's one guy I wouldn't mind having. I also wouldn't mind having someone like Joe Douglas. He's the only one that we've interviewed so far with past GM experience. He GM'd the New York Jets from 2019 to 2024. Granted, it's the Jets, but I know how much experience matters as a general manager of an NFL team. So I wouldn't quite shy away from Joe Douglas yet. And I would also take a look at Mike Bradway. He's been in the Kansas City system since their dynasty started. So when you talk about putting together a winner, Mike Bradway has helped put together a winner. And then it's not like he was in Philadelphia before that, right? He was a part of that Super Bowl winning team in 2017, right? So Mike Bradway has won pretty much everywhere he's gone. So if I had to rank them personally, I'm going probably Mike Bradway, Ian Cunningham, and then Joe Douglas in that order. And that's really all I have for today. One thing you'll come to learn about the why is that getting I'm so sidetracked. One thing you'll come to learn about this podcast is that I'm very quick, right? I'm very quick hitting. I'm gonna give you everything I know as quick as I can. Because we all know y'all have other stuff to do. I have other stuff to do. But yeah, what do I have next week? I actually don't remember what I have planned for next week. So next week, on here I have a question. I might end up making it like a debate because I know I got a couple friends that would love. We will go toe to toe right now, debating about any and everything about the Atlanta Falcons. So that might be what I end up doing next week. More than likely, that's probably what I end up doing next week. But yeah, one more piece of news. My radio show comes back. For those that don't know, I have a radio show here at the Georgia Southern University campus. It's called the Ain States Bureau. It's me and my boy Kenan. We talk about Georgia Southern sports and Atlanta sports. We're going to be talking about the Winter Olympics fairly soon. So if you guys like the Atlanta Falcons, if you like the Hawks, the Braves, and Georgia Southern, if you guys just want to hear my voice, make sure to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll be live there Friday at 2 o'clock. A little bit earlier start time, but because we had so much to talk about, I can't wait to get back in the studio with my boy. It's going to be a great time. Yeah, that's all I got for today's episode of Get Falcon Set. We'll be back next week. Please believe in the franchise. Believe in Matt Ryan. Believe in his vision. Believe in Stefanski. Believe in Tommy Rees until they give you reason not to. With that being said, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications. Still working on the outro a little bit, but hey, eventually we're going to get it now. We're going on a month now. We're going on a month of this podcast. So next time I talk to y'all, it'll be February. Believe it or not. It feels like it's flown by, so I can't believe it. So I will see you guys next week with hopefully another banger episode of this podcast. Take care.